Renaissance Festival up there in Quebec?
Yeah, actually, there's a big one. It's called Les Fêtes de la Nouvelle-France. It's basically a Renaissance fair about when Quebec was discovered and was still called New France. So it's like a week-long thing in the middle of the old city. It's pretty cool.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Well, I went to a Renaissance Festival. We have one here in Kansas City, and it happens every year. It's in this big fairground over on the Kansas side of the city. And actually, the person that I was building those benches for that I talked about last episode, I was building them for his booth out there at the Renaissance Festival. He has a leather maker's booth, and he makes all kinds of leather goods, pouches and bracers and stuff of that nature. So I was making those for him, and I wanted to go out there, and we spent some time out there, me and my girlfriend, and it's this relatively large, I mean, maybe like a square mile or so. It's a large fairground, just filled with all of these booths of makers who make all sorts of different things, like jewelry and like I said, leather. There's several leather crafters out there. And I bought a couple of things that I was pretty excited about. I bought a new bow. I've been practicing archery since I was 10. I went to a summer camp one year and really enjoyed archery at that summer camp, and then have basically I've stopped for periods of time, like a year or two here or there, but I've always owned a bow. And so I wanted to buy a new bow. I bought a lighter weight bow than the one that I normally shoot. So I normally shoot a 45-pound recurve bow. That's the bow I've had since I was 16. And I bought a 30-pound draw weight straight bow. It's made out of bamboo. It's pretty nice. Bamboo's a relatively inexpensive material, so it's not a very high-end bow. It's not a very expensive bow, but it's nice to have something lighter weight to shoot instead of my heavy 45-pound. That it'll wear you out just doing target practice for a little while. So
yeah, for sure. And do you hunt anything except your garage?
No, I've never actually been hunting. I've always meant to, but it's this weird thing where, like, I'll practice, because you have to practice shooting for a while to, like, make sure that you have proper aim to be able to go hunting. And I'll practice, like, in late fall after the bow hunting season has already ended, with the intention of I'll keep doing this until hunting season next year, which I believe, if I remember my dates right, or time frames right, turkey hunting season for bow hunting here in Missouri is like late July into August, and then bow hunting deer season is the end of August. And they separate out bow hunting season from rifle hunting season. That way there's a fairer chance for the bow hunters to be able to catch game rather than all the rifle hunters who can shoot, 400 yards, whereas I can't with a bow. So no, I've never gone. I always meant to, but maybe eventually I will.
That's pretty cool. And do you have any, like, are the arrows any different or expensive? Do you have different type of arrows, or is it just standard across any bow?
No, I have the arrows for both of these bows are a little bit different. I bought with the long, I don't want to call it a long bow because it's only about 4 foot tall, so it's not quite actually a long bow. It's a straight bow. With that one, I bought some arrows with it that are a little bit lighter weight and can accommodate that bow better, whereas with the 45-pound recurve that I have heavier weight arrows because they need to be sturdier to fly straighter. With the heavier draw weight of the bow, you're putting more force behind the arrow instead of less force, blah, 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 etc. We could go down a deep rabbit hole of how exactly arrows work flying off of a bow, but I don't think we need to get into all of those technicalities right now.
No, that's fine. But that sounds really, really cool. I don't think I've ever shot a real bow in my life, just toy stuff from the dollar store, but I've never touched a real bow. So that's super cool.
You should try it at some point. Yeah. I know around me, there's a few places where, like, you can go and rent a bow with, like, an indoor archery range and go and try it. You'll have somebody teaching you how to shoot, or maybe your Renaissance fair up there in Quebec has an archery range and they'll be able to provide you with a bow to shoot a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna look into it for next summer. That could be a fun activity to do.
But
and what else did you buy?
What the only other thing that I bought, I'll send you a picture of it. Actually, I'll send that to you on Discord right now so you can see a picture of it. I bought a dice that somebody carved out of stone. It's a D6. It's about 1 cubic inch. Give me just a second. Hang on. I gotta get like our Discord message.
A pretty big die.
Yeah, it's a very large dice. Very large die. Excuse me. Made out of some really nice stone.
Rubber words. Wow.
But because I play Dungeons and Dragons, I thought it was ideal for me to buy this big, heavy dice. I may not use it very often, but it's real pretty, and I liked it, so I figured why not. And it wasn't very expensive. It was like $10 or something like that.
That's super cool. I love dice.
Yeah, me too.
I don't have enough, but I really... That's an object that I feel it just represents luck, and it can be used in so many different scenarios. Dices are cool.
Yeah, you can never have too many dice.
No. My daughter had a Dora the Explorer, like snakes and ladder kind of game. Or what's the bingo? I think it was a bingo kind of game. And the game was absolutely terrible. But like the only component that was in the game was some cardboard and a dice. And somehow they managed to fuck that up. The dice was super heavy. And when you threw it, it just didn't roll at all. You just threw it and bam, stopped every time you threw it. So
all right. Yeah, that's unfortunate. You should not have a dice that just stops.
No. I didn't know it was possible to screw up a dice, but actually it can happen.
It can, yeah. But this is not the dice podcast, nor is it the archery podcast. This is the Trash Station podcast. Your podcast all about the weird, unknown, and forgotten video games. I am your host, Chris, also known as Scotch and Hobbies on the Internet. I'm here with my co-host, Max, also known as Potomax.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, in our friend circles, we're known to play kind of trashy games. We're talking anime games, retro games, games you've never heard of, indie stuff on itch.io, and everything else like the PlayStation Store and all of that.
And as usual, we'll add those games to our tier list that we call the Landfill, chat about our creative hobbies, and shout out some of our favorite content creators on the internet. And that will get us right into some video games. Max, you brought more games than me this time, which maybe surprises people that listen to our last episode.
Yeah, but we don't have many games this time around. So I have about the same number of games, but you dropped the number of games played in the last few weeks.
I dropped the number of games significantly.
Okay, I'm gonna start with a simple one. It's called Raide. So Raide is an indie game on itch.io. I'm not done with the game, but I'm far enough that I know exactly where I'm gonna put it in the tier list.
Okay.
So Raide is made by a guy, I believe, who's called Cultisty, and he's shaping to be one of my favorite indie devs out there. It's the second game I've played from him in the past year, and both games were fantastic. The other one was a Frogball, which was like a Celeste puzzle platformer kind of game. It was super interesting. But this one is puzzle game. It's just a grid puzzle game, and it's about trains. So basically, you're playing the granddaughter of a train guy, and there was a big storm, and all the train tracks are destroyed all over the town. And you go puzzle by puzzle, rearranging the tracks. So the puzzle game is just like a spatial puzzle game. You have a bunch of tracks that are shaped like Tetris pieces, if you want. So there's like an L and straight tracks, and then you have to put them on the grid so that the train will reach each of the end of the stations. And there's a couple twists in the game. Game is fairly simple, but there are a couple twists, like there's a special pace track that will split the track in two. So in some puzzles, there's only one train, but there's two stations, and you have to manage all the space around to reach both stations. There are also like trash tracks that you have to put on the grid, but don't connect to your main tracks because they've been destroyed by the by the hurricane. I don't know what the storm was, but by the storm. And it's just a fun puzzle game. It's fairly simple. If you can manage to spatially rearrange stuff in your head, the game, at some point, you cannot make the game super difficult unless the grid is super, super big. If you know how to rearrange the tracks and go in trial and errors, it's pretty fine. It's very, very low resolution, so it's all super pixelated. It's like maybe 128 by 128. It's a fairly pixelated game and art styles with a very few colors, and it's super relaxing. The music is like an ambient, mysterious vibe of music. It's super, super cool. And what I really like from this guy is that the game seemed fairly short at first, but there's always multiple layers to its games. Well, at least the two that I've played. So the main story mode, if you want, has 5 different mechanics. So 5 different set of levels, which take about 30 minutes to beat. But once you've done with this, then you unlock the suitcase, and the suitcase has twice as many levels that you can still play. You can also unlock the chest, and the chest also has twice as many of levels to play. So that's what I find fascinating. It's just they're free games. They're free games with good mechanics, good music, good art styles, and yet it doesn't just do the basic stuff that you could do. Just do the main story mode. There's a bit of story, a bit of mystery, and there's 3 times as many levels as you thought that there would be at the beginning of playing the game. So Raide is a fun puzzle game. It's a fun time. It's a relaxing time, and the fact that it's free to me is pretty wild. It's really, really a good free game.
That sounds really cool. That sounds like the kind of puzzle game that I would very much enjoy playing, honestly.
Yeah, there's no stress. There's no timers. It's just you put some tracks and you try to figure it all out so your train can do its thing on the grid, and all the grid is filled out correctly. It's basically like a Sudoku, but with train pieces.
Cool. So where would you like to place it on the tier list?
I'm gonna go in A, great games. It's a great puzzle game, and the fact that there's so many different modes and the story mode and the side content, to me, makes it such a good value, especially since it's free. But I don't think it's exceptional either. The puzzles are fairly simple. The grid is fairly small. So it's not like it's going to win any puzzle game contest. But if you like puzzle games, if you like just want to have a relaxing game going on the second monitor or something, that's fine. You cannot get better than that.
Excellent. I like it. I will try and check that out at some point in time, because that does sound really good.
Yeah, check this his whole itch.io page. He has a ton of stuff. I think I'm seeing like 25 games that is made. I don't know in what time frame, but yeah, there's so many stuff, and I've played these last 2, and those last 2 were really good bangers. So I'm pretty excited to try everything else that he's done.
We should link his itch.io in the show notes. That way people can have easier access to it. If they listen and that sounds interesting to them, they'll easily be able to find his games.
For sure, will do.
So the first game I want to talk about today, I continued to play my Wii for a little while, and I played a game called Resident Evil: The Dark Side Chronicles. This is a sequel to another game that was released on Wii that I played last year called Resident Evil: The Umbrella Chronicles. The Umbrella Chronicles is, well, both of these games first are on-rails first-person shooters. So similar to the House of the Dead franchise, you're moving automatically, you're shooting the zombies that are on screen, except in the Resident Evil universe. Cool concept. I like it. The Umbrella Chronicles plays through Jill Valentine's story through Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 3, and I think Resident Evil 5, I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember. That was a long time ago. That was a year ago. So not that long ago, but a little while ago. Dark Side Chronicles, on the other hand, plays through Leon Kennedy's story. And it starts out as kind of an interlude in between where he was at the end of Resident Evil 2 and kind of shows a little bit of his relationship with Jack Krauser, who's a character from Resident Evil 4 that kind of just showed up, and there wasn't much backstory given to Krauser in Resident Evil 4 when that game first released on GameCube. So this game is trying to like bridge that gap a little bit and show a little bit of their like budding relationship as they first met each other. But it's also at the same time being a flashback through Leon's storytelling of playing through Resident Evil 2, the story of Resident Evil 2, and also Resident Evil Code Veronica, which was originally a Dreamcast exclusive Resident Evil game that eventually came to the PS2, and playing through Claire Redfield's story in that game. So you start out with this Jack Krauser and Leon Kennedy story, and then it goes to the Resident Evil 2 section of the game. And overall, I think the game is kind of fine. Like I said, it's an on-rail shooter, so it's not a very deep game. It's not a very complex game, but there are a little bit of intricacies here and there that I found kind of interesting. There's a lot of environmental things that you can shoot at that unlock, like, money, which allows you to upgrade your weapons in between the individual stages. You can also find, like, I don't know what they're called. They're like little lore tidbits where you can find either pieces of lore or like pieces of concept art, and you have to shoot the environmental piece. Like, could be a barrel or something, but it could also be a light bulb that's really small. We have to shoot that and then shoot the little symbol, and that will unlock these hidden extras also. So like, that's kind of cool. And then you earn gold. You use that gold. You earn gold by collecting it throughout the level, and by beating each of the levels, you earn X amount of gold. Use that gold to upgrade all of your weapons to then go into the next level, and you can upgrade things like the power of your weapon, the ammo capacity, the damage it does. And by power, I mean like the amount of stopping power, the ease it is to make a zombie stop coming forward towards you rather than just kind of absorb the bullet like zombies tend to do in the Resident Evil games. So all of that is kind of cool. The problems I was having with this game, unlike with the Umbrella Chronicles, is that the levels get really hard really, really fast. And I started to find the game really frustrating as I got towards the end of the story of Resident Evil 2, when you have to fight against Birkin a lot, which I know you're not super familiar with the Resident Evil franchise. So
I couldn't help you if you didn't find the name.
Yeah, but so fighting against some of these boss monsters is kind of a really big pain because your weapons don't do a lot of damage, and you're trying to shoot them in very specific individual spots on their body. You know, they have like the glowing orb or an eyeball or something that you have to shoot them in to do the most damage. The problem is that since it's an on-rail shooter, your camera perspective is always kind of shifting a little bit, and so it's always kind of shaking and moving around a little, and you're trying to aim with a Wii remote, which is fairly precise as a tool to just aim at a screen, but is not super precise because I don't have like the Wii Zapper to be able to hold it with two hands. So I'm trying to hold a Wii Nunchuck and the Wii remote both with two hands because I need all of the buttons on both of those remotes to play the game, but I need two hands on my Wii remote to be able to try and aim steadily at the screen at the same time. Because it's shaking so much, I end up having a lot of shots that go off track, which means I'm getting hit by enemies. Because like one of the bosses, one of the forms of Birkin, because Birkin transforms into multiple stages throughout Resident Evil 2, and like one of his attacks, he'll like reach back his arm and swing at you with his big claw, and you have to shoot his arm as he's trying to swing at you, but the screen is also shaking at the same time that he's swinging, so you have a small target that you're trying to hit, and you may be aiming at it, but then the screen shakes, and that, because the screen shakes, you're still aiming at the same spot, so it makes your cursor actually move somewhere else, so then you miss your shot. Kind of frustrating. And then I've not beaten this game. I don't think I'm actually going to end up going back to it. I beat Umbrella Chronicles. That one was not nearly as hard. Darkside Chronicles, for how expensive and kind of rare, I'll put that in big quotation marks, this game is for a physical copy on Wii, I actually expected this to be better than Umbrella Chronicles, but I'm having such a frustrating time with it. I kind of think the game wants you to replay levels over and over to earn that money and earn the currency to make your weapons better, to be able to have an easier time against these bosses, but I don't want to do that, and I also don't have a second player here that wants to, play an old Wii shooter with me either, so probably not going to end up finishing this game. I will say, I had one really, really funny thing happen while I was playing. In Resident Evil 2, there's this character named Sherry. She's a little child that's running away from the zombies and stuff, and you're always kind of chasing after her. So in this one scene, she's like, we're with Sherry. She's standing there. I'm playing as Leon. He turns away. There's zombies in front of me. I go to click the button to shoot, and his focus turns from the zombies and turns back to Sherry right as I'm shooting. So I end up shooting Sherry right in the face with my shotgun, and she just gets knocked over. Doesn't kill her or anything, and then she just gets back up. And I just found that hilarious. I was laughing out loud because of it. It was really funny. But that's the kind of thing that wouldn't happen if the perspective wasn't shifting so often and so quickly.
Yeah. Seems like you needed to have a bit more control on those camera swings and everything.
Yeah, I think that would help. So I actually don't like this game as much as I liked Resident Evil Survivor, which is another light gun game that was on PS1, which I think is actually pretty good despite its reputation of not being very good.
Okay.
But I also think this one's worse than Umbrella Chronicles. If you want a first-person Resident Evil shooter, Umbrella Chronicles is the way to go. And then if you have a CRT TV and a light gun for the PS1, play that game. And then Darkside Chronicles. Darkside Chronicles is $60 complete in box these days. It's a little too expensive, I think, for what this game actually is. As for where I'm going to put it on the tier list, I think it belongs in the B tier. This game's totally fine. It's serviceable. I think it would be a lot more fun if you had a second player there to help you. But as a single player experience, it's a little frustrating and just fine.
Yeah. Could you get a completed save so you could try the game with maxed out weapons or something? Maybe that could be a bit more fun than having to do the grind by yourself.
I'm sure if I was emulating the game, I could do that no problem, but playing on my Wii U on that hardware, I don't think there's any way for me to import a save that I download off the internet onto that console.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that. There's probably some Wii U mods out there that would allow me to import a save and have everything unlocked, but my Wii U is not modded in any way. It's stock standard, just a Wii U out of the box and hooked up to my TV to play. It's basically my HDMI Wii, because I only have 5 Wii U games, but I have 50 Wii games.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a fine machine to play both.
Oh yeah, it's a great machine. I love the Wii U.
Me too. I have mine just right there.
Excellent.
All right, we're gonna continue with. Let's talk Blazin Bajirao.
Okay.
So, Blazin Bajirao is a mobile game. It's an infinite runner that released in 2015, and that's somehow still updated to play on modern iPhones. And I found this game because I was editing my next video for my friend's channel, and I was investigating arcade games made by some company in Quebec called Sarbacam. And while I was scrolling through their YouTube channel, I saw this game that looked kind of interesting. The art style is very graphic novely, if I have to describe it, and I like a good infinite runner. So I was like, oh, that looks fun. I'm going to check it out. And somehow it was still available. So I decided to download it on a whim, and it's a rough time.
Okay.
So, but before I talk about the game itself, I want to talk about who Bajirao is, because I think that's the more interesting part of the story. So Blazin Bajirao is adapting a cartoon made in India called Blazin Bajirao, about Bajirao, an Indian warrior who never lost once in the battlefield. I think he went to war like 40 times or something, and he never lost a single one of his battles. It's like a huge icon out there.
Okay.
So this guy in India is very famous, and I think he has multiple movies and shows about him. And they made a cartoon about his exploits on the battlefield. And the company is called Eros Now, which sounds weirdly erotic, but apparently it's like the Bollywood Netflix. Like you can subscribe to that streaming service, and you just have access to thousands of Bollywood movies and shows. So I tried to watch the first episode of Blazin Bajirao, but I didn't have access to it anywhere. I think there's a few snippets on YouTube, but that's all. And why is there an Indian TV show being adapted by a Quebec City developer? I don't know, but somehow it reached their hands, and now I'm playing it 10 years later on my iPhone 13 Pro. So the game is an infinite runner, like I said, and you have basically 3 moves. You can either slash with your sword, and if you kill an enemy, then it starts a combo, and the second slash is a bit stronger, and then the third slash, you can go through shields and destroy arrows coming at you from the top of the screen. You can also jump, and if you jump and then attack, you will go like straight down in a diagonal way, and that way you can kill some of the shielded enemies. And finally, you also have a bow, and you have like 20 arrows per run, and then you can slide back your bow, and then the game will go in slow motion, and then you can aim your arrows either to the head of the shielded enemies to kill them that way, or to other archers that are trying to kill you. And you can also destroy the arrows coming at you with your arrows. So the gameplay is pretty fine. Like when you get in the groove and then you jump, slash the enemies, then start combo, jump, slow-mo, shoot an arrow through another arrow in the archer, it's kind of fun. But the big problem, there's 2 big problems to this game. The first one is there's no variety. There's normal enemy that you can just slash through. There's a shielded enemy that you can diagonal through it. And there's another type of shielded enemy that you can only kill with arrows or with a combo. That's it. The other enemies are just archers in the screen somewhere shooting arrows at you. So that's all. That's all the variety there is. And the game, and the second problem is that the game is kind of impossible. Your hitbox is super huge. At many points, they're just like dozens of arrows going everywhere on the screen, and you just cannot avoid them. And you cannot start a combo, and you cannot shoot them because it's a weird angle and it's too close to your head. It's kind of frustrating because I'm trying to have fun, and then I'm just getting hammered by stuff that isn't my fault. And the big problem, because since it's an infinite runner, you're playing for a score, and the more enemies you kill, the higher your combo goes, and the higher your combo is, the more points you do. So it caps out at like 5 times the base score. But if you get hit by an arrow because you cannot avoid it, then your combo just goes back down to ×1, and then you cannot reach your high score back again, because at that point there's so many arrows, you always get hit every time.
Does the game speed up at all while you're doing a run? Okay. That's the thing with a lot of infinite runners, is that like they increase their challenge by increasing the speed rather than anything else. You know, that's at least what I remember from like Robot Unicorn Attack that I used to play all the time. Was it got harder by just increasing the speed.
Exactly. No, they went the other way around, where the difficulty is increased by having way more stuff on the screen. That makes, to me, it just makes it cheap, because You just can't avoid it, and then you die. It's not really your fault. And I said there's only 2 problems with the game. There's many more problems with the game, actually. Somehow, a game that released almost 10 years ago is chugging on my iPhone 13 Pro. It's ridiculous. Like, I think there's a problem in coding it somewhere, because at first it's fine, but then randomly the game just skips frames and it doesn't respond well, and I fall in a pit and die. So I don't really understand how I can play all those high-end games, but this old-ass game doesn't work on my phone. So that's also frustrating. And the last thing that's also frustrating is that the game is basically impossible to beat. So the one thing that the game has going for is that there's challenges that you have to do one after the other. So even though it's an infinite runner, there's a set of 25 challenges that you have to do. So the first one is like kill 10 enemies and then reach X number of points. But then you have other that are a bit more challenging, like kill 20 enemies without getting hit, and kill X enemies using your special attack, and stuff like that. But I was thinking of beating the game, like, just because for the lols, I would be like the only guy doing all the challenges in the last 10 years. But I've seen one of the challenges, which is do your special attack 20 times in a single run. And in a normal run, I do the special attack like 3 times. It's super long to charge your special attack. So that challenge just seems impossible. So I'm not gonna play it anymore. But like I said, it's kind of frustrating because the base game is fine. Like I said, when you string your combos, you do the arrow thing and you manage to shoot arrows through arrows, it's kind of fun, but there is no substance, there is no quality, and also there's a couple places where it says more to come, like level 2 coming soon, and more upgrades to come, but the game has been out for like 9 or 10 years and there's only 1 level. So I don't think there's anything coming out soon.
No, I don't think there's anything coming either. Was this free at least, or did you pay money for it?
Yeah, at least it's a free game and there's not even ads in it. So I think it was more like a promotional thing to showcase the cartoon more than anything.
Probably.
If I think I saw that it was on Amazon Prime at some point, so I think it had like a bit of an international run. But yeah, in 2024, it's just like an Indian oddity. It's a weird game. It's for the tier list. I'm gonna go in almost trash. Like I've done like half of the challenges, and I've played for a couple hours, maybe 2 or 3, and in those I managed to get a pretty good high score, and that was kind of fun to do. So there's something there. Like if the game was polished a little bit, had a bit more variety, I think it could have been a fun auto runner. Oh yeah, and I haven't said it, but you asked if the game became any faster, but the game is so slow. Like your character just trots along. It is not running for combat. It's just like jogging on the battlefield. And every minute or so, there's like a 20 seconds of nothing happening. It's like a checkpoint. It's not a checkpoint because you can't restart from it, but it's like a checkpoint in the sense that there's no enemies and you get some money and you get an upgrade, and that is also bugged because you can either get a life upgrade, so you get more life, or you can get more arrows. But it seems like the game decides which one you will get when you start the game, not when you start a run. When you start the application, it looks like it decides, oh, I'm either going to give you only health upgrades or only arrow upgrades.
Oh.
So, yeah, so if start a run and you get a heart upgrade, then you will run out of arrows. You will never get arrows from the chest. So yeah, a lot of bugs, a lot of weird things. There's a good base in there, but it's almost trash. If the base wasn't there, it would have been back in the trash. But there's a little something there, a little something.
Okay. So next game that I want to talk about is Dead Space 2. Do you have any familiarity with the Dead Space franchise?
No, not really. I know a bit from watching YouTubers talk about the game and like the HUD stuff and a bit more of the technical aspects of the game, because it was a bit revolutionary at that point, because it was like a really minimal HUD where everything appears directly on your character and everything. So I know a bit of the game, but I've never played any of the Dead Space games.
Okay, so the Dead Space games are third-person survival horror shooters. I would call them more like horror action shooters rather than actual survival horror. If you play on the harder difficulties, there's definitely more of that survival aspect where like ammo is running really low and your health packs are running really low, so you have to be a lot more cautious, and that adds to the tension. But I am bad at video games, so I tend to play on easier difficulties. So a little bit of that tension of the survival aspect of this game was not in my playthrough of it. But you're right, Dead Space is kind of famous for its HUD, your health, and your you have an ability called Stasis, which is essentially a slow down time ability that you can use on both enemies and objects within the environment. Those are both displayed on the back of your character rather than like on a bar that's up in the corner of the screen. And then when you go into your inventory, your character Isaac pulls up like a holographic display that shows up that moves with you while you're moving around. Mm-hmm. and you menu through that, and you can menu through it while also moving. So in a similar way to like in Dark Souls, when you pull up the menu in Dark Souls, you're still able to move your character around and then menu with the D-pad and move your character with the analog stick. So it's certainly revolutionary in that way. I will say also, the Dead Space 2 looks absolutely phenomenal for a PS3 game. Like it goes for like a very pseudo-realistic style, but it's also stylized in such a science fiction way that and a lot of hard right angles and dark and metallic panels on the walls and sharp corners and stuff, that it all still looks really, really good. And that's in complement with like the lighting engine that they used. Like this game, the difference between light and dark in this game, the contrast is absolutely phenomenal. Like lights kind of flickering in the darkness will light up your character model and light up the environment in different ways. And then you have a flashlight on your weapon, so like if you're walking around as pitch black, you have to be aiming your weapon to have your flashlight out to be able to see, and then you can really only kind of see within that flashlight cone. It adds this level of tension, because this game is, well, all the Dead Space games, well, the three that I've played Dead Space 1, Extraction, which is on the Wii, and this one now, Dead Space 2, are like they build themselves on this atmosphere of just like darkness and brutality and gore. Like this is a very violent game, so you're seeing a lot of corpses that have been mutilated in different ways. All of your enemies were at one point human, who have been mutated by this thing called the Marker. We're not going to go too deep into the lore of Dead Space, but essentially this thing called the Marker infects people with this sort of like mind virus that makes them mutate and become these crazed, psychopathic, just we want to kill everything that we can see kind of monsters. So really dark, really bloody, really gory, lots of really good scares. And the scares come both from jump scares and just from like the general atmosphere of the game, because everything is kind of, like I said, so dark and just kind of gross. So the main gameplay loop of Dead Space is you're going around this spaceship. This game's extremely linear, so you're following a very straight path, trying to complete tasks. Isaac Clarke, your main character, is an engineer, so he's not a super soldier. He's a guy who knows how to fix things. And all of the tools that you use, all the weapons that you use, for the most part, are tools that he would be using to fix things on the ship that just happen to also be able to kill the enemies that you come across. So things like Sawblades, and he has it's like a laser rifle thing. It's used to cut through metal and stuff. That's like his primary weapon, his main pistol. And
so the same guy from the first game?
Yeah, this is the same guy from the first game. This is a direct sequel from the first game, so narratively it directly follows the first game. And you end up going back to some of the same areas from the first game also, which is kind of a cool throwback. I don't think this game is as good as the first game, but it certainly keeps the same feeling and the same action and the same atmosphere as the first one. I don't think it's as good because the story is kind of forgettable. Like the story in Dead Space 1 was so good because of like the mystery and the intrigue and trying to figure out what was going on. And you don't really in Dead Space 1, you don't really see your main character Isaac at all until the end of the game. So he's this mysterious character who's just always in this suit. You never see his face. And all of the story and things are coming in through audio logs and like text documents, and then like voice chat from other characters within the world. In that game, the Ishimura, which is the spaceship that you're in that's been infected with this mind virus. And so you're getting all of the story from all of those other characters and all these other things, whereas this one, he takes a more forward role and is actually talking more with these with new characters who I don't know and don't really care about, and the game tries to make me care about, but it doesn't do a very good job of making me care about them, honestly. But the core gameplay is still so good that it's just a lot of fun to play. So you're walking around in these spaceship sci-fi environments, and all of the enemies have like mutations coming off them where they have like big extra claws or extra arms and stuff, and the core gameplay loop that has made Dead Space so famous is that the enemies don't die like in most shooters by shooting them in like the chest or the head. You have to dismember them. So you're aiming to shoot off their legs, you're aiming to shoot off their arms, and all of your weapons, or most of your weapons, have like multiple fire modes where they can shoot vertically or horizontally to make that easier depending on what you're aiming for. And I'm bad at shooters, so I tend to shoot enemies in the legs anyway, which means I'm pretty good at shooting enemies in Dead Space because I'm used to shooting things in the legs. Yeah.
So the camera must be a bit more still than in Resident Evil.
Oh, it sure is a lot more still, and you have direct control over it. But so, as you're playing through the game, you're collecting a couple of different currencies. You're collecting money, credits that you pick up, and those allow you to buy new guns, or like healing packs, health packs, or more ammo if you need more ammo. I never ran out of ammo, A, because I was playing on an easier difficulty, and B, because every time you kill an enemy, you can stomp on their corpse. And when you do that, they will either drop more ammo, or they will drop a health pack, or sometimes money. So I never really felt that need to buy more ammo, because I usually had so much that my inventory was getting full to where I was like, I can just sell off some of this to be able to get the other currency, which are nodes. These power nodes allow you to upgrade your weapons in the same kind of way that I was talking about with Darkside Chronicles. You can upgrade all of your weapons, damage, ammo capacity, stopping power. There's a couple other things. I think reload speed is one of them. So you can upgrade all of your weapons, but the way the upgrading works in this game is that there's essentially like a grid where you have to start at one particular spot or two particular spots and put a node into that spot and then progress along a traced path And each one of those nodes on that path will give you a different upgrade or will be a blank spot that you have to put a node into to be able to get to more of the actual useful upgrades. So most of my currency ended up going to buying power nodes to be able to upgrade my weapons more. And then you can find those nodes also throughout the environment. It's a lot like the Final Fantasy X sphere grid, if you ever played that. I don't know if you played Final Fantasy X.
No, I don't think I've ever played. I've played a bit of Final Fantasy like 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Advance. I think that's the only thing I'm familiar with Final Fantasy. I know basically nothing about that franchise.
Okay, another massive franchise you know nothing about. Got it.
Yeah, a lot of blind spots.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Our listeners, I'm sure, will know what the sphere grid is in Final Fantasy X. I'm not going to go deep onto that. But yeah, so the way that you upgrade these weapons is kind of cool in that, like, you have these choices of, like, well, I have 2 power nodes left, and I've got 4 places that I could move on this grid. Do I want more ammo capacity or do I want more damage right now? And you have to make that choice. So I always kind of like that. I think it's really, really cool. It's a fun way. And then those carry over into like a new game plus if you want to play through the game again, which makes for fun replay value. I think these games actually do have really, really good replay value where carry over all of your weapons. Now you got more powerful weapons. You can play on a harder difficulty and stand a better chance of actually surviving. Yeah, I don't think I have much else to say about Dead Space. Like, do you have any questions about this game before I put it on the tier list?
Is it only on ships or do you go on planets and stuff?
There are no planets in this game. You are only on spaceships. In Dead Space 1, you do go down onto, like, the surface of one planet, but you're inside, like, a space base on top, on the surface of that planet, so you're not really actually on the surface of the planet. You're still in sci-fi hallways most of the time. There are some sections where, like, you'll go into zero gravity where you can kind of just float around, and they handled that really well, both in terms of the camera and the way that you move in the zero gravity. Is probably one of the best games for zero gravity that I've ever seen. So that's really cool. And then there are a few sections where, like, the oxygen is completely taken out of the air and you have an oxygen tank on your back, but it's a limited resource that you have to refill with certain places. So you have to be fighting enemies and completing tasks, usually in zero gravity, while you have limited oxygen. So you're on a timer, and if you fail, you're going to die because you're going to suffocate. So there's a lot to love about this game. I think this game's a really good sequel in every way except for the story from Dead Space 1. And so, in that case, I will put it into our A tier. It is a great game. I do think people should play this if they liked Dead Space 1. This game runs fantastically on a PS3. That's why I played it on. I had no issues. I didn't have frame rate drops, which the PS3 is notorious for with some ports sometimes. It's a super polished, high-end AAA game, and you can get physical copies of it for $10. So I see no reason to not play this if you own a PS3 or Xbox 360.
That sounds super fun, and I think A is super fair.
Yeah. All right, what would you like to talk about?
I'm going to talk about one of my favorite games that I have not talked about yet, and it's called A Slight Chance of Sawblades.
Excellent.
So, yeah, this game released last year in early 2023. I think it was in January, and actually it's the first game I've ever tweeted for the Polykill podcast. So that was my entry point in the podcast.
Okay.
And that game is made by a guy from Singapore called Chinikan, and I'm in his Discord. I love the guy. He makes great arcade games, and this game is actually a remake sequel thing of an earlier game he made called Jump Over the Rings, which I played on my Android phone, like, again, almost 10 years ago. And in that game, in Jump Over the Rings, it was super simple. So you had a little guy at the bottom, and then there were rings that would fall from the top angles, bounce on the walls, and you had to jump over them to make points. And if you jumped over multiple rings at the same time, you get better score. So that was it. That was the whole game, and it was super fun. Like, it sounds so simple, but it's also really, really hard, because in a matter of seconds, you have like 6 or 7 rings jumping around and bouncing around in the level, and the level is fairly small, so it becomes really hard to avoid things. But the game was also quite buggy. I had like a super good score at one point, but it was because my phone was overheating, so the game was running slowly, and the timer would would drop down way more slowly than usual, so I could have better scores. So anyway, enough with Jump Over the Rings. I liked that game at that time, but A Slight Chance of Sawblades is a better game in every way. So what are the changes? Well, first, the graphics are a super upgrade. It's like the first game was a bit more like an NES game, but now it looks a bit more like a Super Nintendo game. It's the guy Chinikan does all his own pixel art, and it's a super cute styles with bold outlines on everything. I love its styles. It's minimalistic, but it's also super punchy and super contrasted. So that looks really good. And the logic of the Sawblades falling from the top is way better than in Jump Over the Wings. Jump Over the Wings. Yeah, wings. Jump Over the Rings. In that game, that first game, at some point you could get like vertical rings, and it was really awkward, and you get weird angles. But in this one, he made it sure that there's always a good angle and a good way to jump over those saw blades. And there's also a double jump now, so that's really, really helpful when you want to do a big combo and jump like over 4 saw blades at the same time. Having more mobility in the air is super appreciated. And the game is just that. You're at the bottom, there are saw blades bouncing, and then it bounces back at the top and it leaves the screen. The difficulty is that there's a timer. So the timer will go down, and when you jump over a saw blade, you will get 1 point and 1 time pickup. And if you pick up that, you get 1 second. It's not real seconds. It's like faster seconds. The timer goes down faster than a real timer. But I'm just going to say seconds because it's way more logical to say that like that.
Right.
So if you jump over 2 blades, then you will get 2 points for your score, but you will get 3 time pickups. So the logic is the more saw blades that you jump at the same time, the more time pickups that you will get, so you can have more time to reach a better high score. And the game will get gradually more difficult with more blades coming from the top until you reach 100 in score, which is like the win condition if you want, because after that there's no... So for every like 5 points that you get, there's a special step that you will get called, like you're a superstar, you're a veteran, you're a superhero and stuff like that. So 100 is like the cap for those titles that you can get. And at that point, the game is just super difficult, and it stays at the same difficulty until you run out of time, or if you get hit by it. And when the game released last year, I was the best player in the world, and I was even better than the creator himself. Well, right now, my high score is higher than the high score of Chinikan in the main mode, so that's a little brag, but there's a guy... my high score, I think, is 328 or something like that, and the best score in the world is over 1,000 now. It takes like 15 minutes to reach. Yeah. And once your timer reaches 0, you don't lose automatically, but the game becomes kind of impossible. The saw blades become twice as large, and they go twice as fast, and there's twice more blades going in the screen, so it gets pretty much impossible to stay alive. And another thing that's pretty cool with the game is that there's a lot of customizations that you can unlock. So the more you play, the more you get tickets based on your score, and those you can exchange those tickets for different backgrounds, different Sawblades. So you can change your Sawblade to look like a biscuit or a cookie. It's the same thing. A flower, a donut, and all kind of brown stuff. And there's also a bunch of characters. And I'm technically in the game because I had made a little pixel art of a hot dog guy, and Chinikan put it in the game. He has redrawn the hot dog, but he put the hot dog in the game and he called it Max Dog. And I also have a hot dog costume, so I'm basically a character in this game. So
that's very cool.
Yeah, I had a little thing on Twitter I could send you where I move like the character with my hot dog costumes. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, do that for sure.
Yeah. And so why I'm bringing the game on the show right now is because I'm in the tester channel, so I have access to beta updates before they go live for everyone. And there's a new mode that finally released in the game. It's a third mode in the game. The second mode is released last year in around October 2, which was Phantom mode, where your character is invisible. So you cannot see your character, but you can kind of get glimpses of your character while you jump and when you switch directions and land on the floor. So that mode is really, really difficult because you cannot see yourself, but at the same time, you get so used of only looking at the Sawblades and where to jump that it's almost the same as the main mode. But in the end, it gets more difficult when there's a lot of stuff on screen, but you get weirdly familiar with how your character moves. But the new mode is called Barrage, and it's super hard. Basically, instead of the blades going out the top, they stay on the screen. So there's no timer. So when you jump over a blade, you still get the points the same as in the normal mode. So one blade is 1 point. But now the time pickups are hype pickups. And when you reach 20 hype points, then you go into hype mode. And in hype mode, your points are doubled for one jump. So if you jump over 2 blades, then you will get 4 points. And those 2 blades will get deleted from the screen until they reappear. So you kind of get a buffer between the rounds. And so the difficulty is that there's so much stuff in the screen, at all times. Before the first hype mode, there's like 7 blades in the screen. And then after each hype mode, there's 1 more blade that will get on the screen. So for the second hype mode, you will need to deal with 8 blades bouncing around the screen, and then 9 blades, and then 10 blades. And at some point, you're just staying at the bottom, avoiding everything, and just doing small jumps and get 1 point at a time. But you can also get huge combos that you cannot get in the normal mode. Like I think I did a 9 blades combo where I jumped everything on the screen, and I was so excited that I lost like a couple seconds after, but it was pretty incredible. And yeah, I love this game. It's super simple. You move left and right, you jump and double jump over blades. There's a lot of customizations, and I don't get addicted to stuff in general. But that game, I can spend like 3 hours just trying to get a new high score, and I don't see the time fly by. That game is my kryptonite. I love the game loop. I love that arcade. I made a little tiny arcade papercraft of this game. I designed like a little arcade thing and put it all together. It's one of my favorite games. It's one of my favorite mobile games. It's super, super fun. The touch controls work super well. The guy is super cool. I often watch his streams. Since he is in Singapore, I wake up and then there's a stream alert as soon as I wake up. So I start my days often just watching him develop the new modes and stuff. And yeah, I love that guy. I love his games. And A Slight Chance of Sawblades to me is an absolute banger. It goes straight into S tier. I would love to have this as a real arcade machine and have like big buttons and control this with a joystick. Oh yeah, it's a real good. And that new mode, one thing that I didn't like about the normal mode is that to reach the 100 points mark where it gets really difficult, it takes about a minute and 15 seconds. So if you want to grind for high score, it gets pretty long and pretty tedious to reach the point where it gets actually tough and actually kind of fun because you get good at the game. But with this new mode, it's hard straight from the start, and I love it. It's basically my new favorite mode. It's really fun.
Excellent. That's a game that I've heard of, and I've heard nothing but good things about, so I'm excited to I've still never checked it out, unfortunately, so I'm excited to hear about a new mode, and maybe I'll check it out someday.
For sure, highly recommended. And like, the guy is super cool. If you have any ideas and stuff, is super reactive to everything. And yeah, a great game, and it should come to Steam eventually. So if you have it, it's also available on. Right now, it's only available on Android and iOS, but at some point in the future, it should get some ports. But right now, it's just a mobile game. But it also works with every kind of controllers, so you don't have to use the touch controls.
Excellent. I wonder if you would be able to set up an arcade cabinet that had just like a MAME emulation board in it,
Actually,
or like a RetroPie.
I have a plan with my basically my wife had a Chromebook, which is at her father's right now, but he doesn't use it. So my plan would be to get that Chromebook, and I actually have a USB board with joysticks and buttons. So I think I would be able to just like set the Chromebook in a vertical way in a wooden frame. And then I would be able to just plug my USB joystick and stuff and I would like to make countertop cabinet with one joystick. They can only move left and right, a button to jump, and the screen right there with the game. So I think it would work. It would be my plan for like 2025 of hobby time. That's something I would like to try to do in the next few months.
Yeah, I think that would work. Yeah, I don't see why not. I'm excited to hear if you actually end up going ahead and doing that. So,
for sure,
we'll talk about it at a later point. Yeah. All right. So the last game that I brought today is a game called Tormented Souls. It is a smaller indie game. I should have looked up who made this game. I am very sorry, because they definitely deserve the shout out here. Developed by Dual Effect and Abstract Digital. I believe that Dual Effect is the primary developer, at least from my Google search right here. I might be wrong about that. So, if I am wrong, I apologize. But this game is a 2022 indie survival horror game that draws all of its reference to PS1 style survival horror games, and that's like where I live in terms of horror usually in gaming is the PS1 and early PS2 era. Tank controls, fixed camera angles, everything is kind of just dark and tense, and you're not the focus isn't on like smooth and fluid movement as smooth and fluid combat. It's on kind of just exploration and puzzles and trying to find your way through an environment. I love this style of game, and Tormented Souls is absolutely a callback to that style of game, and I really, really love it. I would say it's a little bit closer to Resident Evil than it is to Silent Hill, simply because Resident Evil tends to be more focused on one large environment. So like in Resident Evil 1, you're primarily playing through the Spencer Mansion. Yes, there are a few other maps to travel through, but your primary area in Resident Evil 1 is the Spencer Mansion. In Tormented Souls, you have this hospital. I don't remember what it was called. I don't think I wrote down the name of the hospital, and I definitely should have. But you have this large hospital, and that is your primary and only map that you're trying to traverse through. So you have all of these different areas of the hospital, corridors that lead to multiple doors. Some of those doors are going to be locked. You have to solve puzzles in individual rooms to get another key to be able to then use that key. And that key may not be like an actual physical key to a door. Like one of the keys is like a battery that allows you to access a lift a little bit later in the game. So you have to find the battery, you have to find the way to charge the battery, and then use the battery in the lift to be able to access a different area within a specific room. Those are the kind of puzzles that you're usually solving. There are some puzzles that are more riddles, where it'll be like you'll have a tablet or something within a room, and it'll have some words on it that convey some sort of story, but there's certain pieces of that story that specifically convey to an interactable puzzle within the room, and you have to solve the riddle to solve the puzzle to be able to progress forward with the story.
I
So
can see the hospital is called Wild Burger.
Wild Burger, that is 100% correct. That is, I think the main antagonist of the game is the Wild Burger. I think it's, I don't remember his name. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. They're Wild Burger dude.
Yeah. So the way that the game is set up is that your main character receives a letter in the mail, and it has this photograph of these two girls and like a message basically saying, hey, come to this hospital, you know, they need help or something of that nature. So you go to the hospital. In the cutscene, your character is wandering around the hospital, and she goes around a corner, and then she gets hit on the head by somebody, and you wake up and you're in a bathtub full of water with a breathing tube down your throat, and your eye has been cut out. So it starts off violent. It does not get any more pleasant from there.
Nice.
So you find your way out of that room, and then you're exploring this hospital, and you're just trying to solve these puzzles. I'm not quite at the end of this game yet. I was trying to get to the end of the game before we recorded today, and I just was not able to. As much as I love this style of game, sometimes these puzzles can be a little bit challenging. Like when I replay an old Resident Evil game, the puzzles aren't challenging anymore because I've played them multiple times. And same with like Silent Hill. Like I understand how those puzzles function in those games for the most part. This game, it's put like twists on the way that the puzzles are actually solved. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them are very like Resident Evil style puzzles. But some of them do have like little minor twists on them that have made it so that I'm not able to progress through this game quite as fast as I thought I was going to. I also think this game is actually kind of challenging, like more challenging than I found a lot of those older survival horror games. So earlier this year, before we started the podcast, I had played through Silent Hill 3 for the first time, and I didn't have very much trouble playing through that game at all, despite the fact that I had never played it before. And I think a lot of that just had to do with, like, I understood how Silent Hill 1 and 2 played. Silent Hill 3 was a direct sequel to 1. It plays exactly the same. Its puzzles function in the way that they describe what the solution is exactly the same as the previous Silent Hill games had. It didn't do much of anything to innovate on the formula. I think Tormented Souls innovates on the formula of how puzzles are supposed to be solved. in an interesting way that I can't really articulate without going into a lot of spoilers that I don't want to do. And I think they did that specifically because they're fans of this genre and they wanted to make a game that was going to be appealing to people who are fans of the genre while also still adding and providing a little bit of challenge to kind of, make people, kind of have that feeling of playing one of these games again for the first time. So, very cool. I'm having a lot of fun playing it. Your primary weapon in the game is a nail gun instead of a pistol, which is kind of interesting. It functions exactly the same as a pistol, so it's not that much of a deviation, but it's kind of its look and the visceral nature of it makes it somewhat different. I do have a few small frustrations with this game, and I don't think they're big enough for me to not recommend it, but I do think the frustrations are something that could be ironed out in Tormented Souls 2 when they eventually release that, because that's slated to be released either later this year or early next year. I don't remember when. So, for one, you have an item to save your game, much like you do in the original Resident Evil games. So it acts the same as the ink ribbons in Resident Evil. The difference is that when you pick up one of these items, they're like a recording tape to audio record your thoughts. And whenever you save, if something major has happened within the story, your main character will speak like a monologue about what has just happened and what her plan is to do next to kind of reinforce that in your mind, which I think is cool. I think that aspect of it is really cool. The problem that I have with it is that every one of those audio tapes that you find to be able to save your game is a single-use item, unlike in Resident Evil, where whenever you found one of the ink ribbons to be able to save your game, it would give you 2 to 3 ink ribbons at a time, so that you were able to save your game, 2 to 3 times, instead of once per every time you find one of these limited resource items within the game. I respect them for sticking with that formula and really trying to, make it so that it feels like an old horror game. But the fact that they're single use instead of even double use is a little frustrating, because there have been times where I saved and then played for 30 minutes and then died. And then now I have to replay the last 30 minutes that I maybe wouldn't have had to replay. I maybe would have had to replay 10 minutes had I just had one more save.
Yeah, it's not like you can guess when you will get the next saved item.
Yep, you can't guess when you're going to get the next save item, and you also can't guess what's going to be in the next room, and maybe that next room is 3 enemies instead of 1, and then you're going to get overwhelmed, but it's also the only way that you haven't gone yet. So it's the path forward that you need to traverse, but it's also a challenging path forward. It's not impossible, you can survive the encounter, but if you're not expecting it, it can be a very tough challenge to get through it on your first try. So I have a small frustration with that. Second small frustration is that you can play the game with both original tank controls or with analog controls. So for those unaware, tank controls, if you're pressing forward, you're always moving forward. Right always turns your character right. Left always turns your character left. Back always moves your character backwards. Analog controls move your character in the direction of what way you're pointing the analog stick in comparison to how they are currently facing on the screen. So when camera angles change, if you're going down a hallway, the camera angle might change to where you're running towards the camera, and then you pass the camera switch, and then you're running away from the camera. If you're using tank controls, pressing up means you're always going forward. If you're using analog controls, you can kind of get a crisscross there. I don't have a problem with tank controls. I love that they included tank controls. That's how I want to play this game, and that's how I do play this game. My problem is that there are sections where you have to interact with items, and you can't interact with items with the D-pad that you're using for tank controls. You can only interact with those items with your analog stick. So, unlike in a game like Silent Hill, where often you would go into a first-person view and be looking at a scene and have to interact with something within this scene as though it were a first-person point-and-click adventure, you would be able to move your cursor around with the D-pad. In Tormented Souls, you cannot move your cursor with the D-pad. You can only move it with the analog stick. So I'm having to constantly flip back and forth and forget that I can't move my cursor with the analog stick instead of the D-pad. It's such a minor thing, but it annoys me so badly. And then my final frustration actually is with the map of the game. For the longest time, I did not realize that there was a specified map button. In most modern games on PS4, you would access the map by pressing the center touchpad button. So you would actually press down on that button. That usually accesses your map. And in the old Resident Evil games, you would press triangle to go into your menu to access your map. So you can access your map by pressing triangle, going into your menu, and then going into your files folder within the menu, and then scrolling through, finding your map, and then accessing the map in there. Or you can press R3. I did not know that you could press down on the analog stick for the first 2 hours I was playing this game, because I don't think the game told me. So that was slightly annoying. But my frustration with the map actually comes with the fact that the map is split up into 5 individual sections. So the hospital that you're in has an east wing and a west wing, and then a basement. And the east wing and the west wing both have first floor and second floor. So you have east 1, east 2, west 1, west 2, basement. Those are your 5 sections of the map. Whenever you press the map button, it does not bring you automatically to whatever section of the map you're currently in. It'll always bring you into East Wing Floor 1, which is the first section of the map that you start in.
Yeah.
It's so small. That's such a small thing, but it's very, very annoying because, it's a survival horror game where you have a kind of intricate layout on this map, and you may not know exactly where you need to go, so you need to check the map often. At least I do, because I don't know the layout of this hospital. But so now every time I go into the map, I have to press R3, and then I have to move my hand from the D-pad over to the analog stick because the D-pad doesn't work.
Yeah.
Select the tab for the floor that I'm currently on, in what wing I'm currently on, look at where I am, and then the map doesn't tell you exactly where you're at within a room. It tells you what room you're in, just like in the classic Resident Evil games. I don't have a problem with that at all, but that can be, it can lead to this secondary slight frustration where oftentimes I'll check the map and say, okay, I know where I need to go, and then I get back into the room and I'm like, all right, there's 5 doors out of this room. Which one am I currently standing next to? And then I have to go back into the map and go through that whole process again to make sure that I know that I'm standing next to the right door, so that then I exit out of the correct door, progress forward. So these very small frustrations, they add up to making this game be from an S tier, I would absolutely recommend this, to being an A tier for me. Unfortunately, because everything else about this game I think is absolutely fantastic. I think if they iron out these tiny, minuscule little flaws in Tormented Souls 2, I will love that game a lot more, I'm sure. I mean, so long as the map is great and they continue with tank controls and the same styling and everything.
Yeah. Would you even recommend it to someone who's never played a Resident Evil game, or should someone play a Resident Evil game first to get the gist of the genre and then go to Tormented Souls?
No, I think anybody could go ahead and pick up and play this game, and I would just say that if you feel like you're getting stuck at some of the puzzles, don't be afraid to look up a walkthrough or ask for help. I don't think there's any shame in looking up information about a game if you're feeling frustrated. There was certainly a point in time in my life where I would have said otherwise and been like, no, never look up anything. You end up just abandoning games by doing that. It's better to just look up a solution to a puzzle that you're struggling with. Maybe don't look it up immediately, but if you're spending 20 minutes trying to find the solution to a puzzle and you still can't find it, just look it up and continue on with the fun of the game rather than sit there and struggle with something that's obtuse almost needlessly.
Totally agree.
So with all that said, I think I'm gonna put this in our A tier. I think this is a great game. I think it just barely, so very barely, doesn't make absolute banger for me. Like it's so close to being everything that I want it to be, and it just slightly misses the mark. It's unfortunate.
Good.
But it's still great. Like, I still love this game.
Yeah, exactly. And they have a chance to redeem themselves with
the sequel.
Game.
Yeah.
Is it already out, or is it coming soon?
No, the second game is coming soon. Let's see. Let me get an answer to that real quick. Coming soon to PC and consoles. I don't think we have a release date yet.
Yeah, I think it's it's
Dual Effect. Dual Effect is the name of the developer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a definitive release date, but if it does not release this year, probably next year.
Yeah, it seems like it's pushed back to 2025.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to that. I knew that game was coming. I knew the sequel was coming, so I definitely wanted to get to that one this year. That I've been sitting on this game since 2022. Like, I purchased it 2 years ago when it released, or around the time that it released, and have just been sitting on it in my PlayStation library. It's been installed on both my PS4 and PS5 that's now dead for basically that entire time, with me just being like, I know I'm going to love this when I eventually play it, and I hadn't gotten around to it, and I was like, this is the year, this is the Halloween that I actually do it.
All right, so for the final game of the tier list, this week, I'm going to talk about Inscryption.
Ooh.
So, yeah, if you know anything about Inscryption and you haven't played it yet, it's a huge spoiler mine. So if you're averse to spoilers, I'm going to spoil a bunch of things because it's spoilers all around. So just check the chapters and go to the hobby time. But long story short, it's a good game. But yeah, you're going to see it on the tier list where I put it if you go check the Landfill in the show notes. So, spoilers. Inscryption at first is card game. It's a roguelike deck builder. It's a creepy roguelike deck builder. You're in a cabin. It's all 3D, but also kind of pixelated with very harsh graphics and contrast. And you're basically a tormented soul forced to play that card game against a weird, creepy guy forever. So the first section of the game is that card game. The main mechanic is a bit like Yu-Gi-Oh! So you have cards that you can play without sacrificing any character, any other cards. There's 4 locations on the board. There's only creatures. And you put those first creatures, which are squirrels that are free. And then you draw other cards that have blood sacrifice requirements. So you either have to sacrifice 1 creature, 2 creatures, 3 creatures to play them. So the 1 blood creature, you have to sacrifice 1 squirrel, and then that squirrel is dead, and you can put your better creature on the board.
That sounds exactly like Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically the same mechanic as Yu-Gi-Oh!, but instead of using stars, you're using just a blood requirement. And there's also other type of mechanics, like you can get creatures that don't die if you sacrifice them. So you can sacrifice your squirrel to put that little kitten, or I think it's a baby dragon, and that baby dragon then becomes like a free sacrifice thing. You can also get other creatures that if you sacrifice them, they come back in your hands. So you can actually find some objects that will put that on your squirrel, so you kind of have infinite sacrifice to put all your creatures on the board. So that's super cool. And there's a lot of combos like that build up. There are other creatures that you can put not by using sacrifices, but by using bones. And you get 1 bone token every time one of your creature dies. So you can build up tokens and then use those tokens to put stronger creatures on the board without having to sacrifice anyone. How the game plays is that you have those set of rules, and the guy you're playing against doesn't have that set of rules. You see what are the next cards that he is going to play, and all creatures have both attack and defense, and it's very simple in the sense that the creature will attack the other creature that's in front of them, and you will attack their defense. So if you have one attack and the other creature has one defense, it dies. And if the creature has 2 defense, well, it will actually drop 1 defense point, and it will stay on the board, but it will have 1 less defense for the next turn, and then you can kill it on the other turn. So the point damage that you do stay on the creatures for all time until they're dead. That's the main mechanic of the game. When you die in that roguelike state, then you can create some cards. That's super cool. So my first card was I created Potomax, and then you use some stats of your cards that you built in your deck for all your run, and then you mix them up to make like a super card. I made a Potomax card. I made a card for my daughter. I made Blink from Polykill. I don't remember, but I did a bunch of people because I died a lot. And beside the card game, there's puzzles all around the cabin. So you can go up from the table, stop playing the card game, and start doing some puzzles in the cabin. And then you get cards that are talking to you, and then you get some sense that the guy who's making you play is weird and has captured other creatures in the card game, and then everything starts getting glitchy and dark and weird. And long story short, you play the game for like 3 different maps, and they're maps a bit like Slay the Spire. So every turn on the map you can choose 1 or 2 different choices. Either sacrifice some cards to make other cards better, add some cards to your deck, play a round of card game. And once you've done your 3 maps and beaten the 3 bosses, there's a final boss, and then the game go haywire. Basically, the game becomes an alternate reality game where you're not in that 3D space anymore, but you're watching videos of a YouTuber making videos about the card game that you were playing, and then you realize that you were not playing Inscryption, the video game. You were playing this guy playing the Inscryption video game that he found in the forest, because the original creator died while making the game. And then you go into the second section of the game. After watching those videos, then the game becomes a 2D RPG kind of game. You're still playing the card game, but the game now is a bit like Undertale in its graphical style, and you have to defeat 4 different bosses in this world map, and each section of the map has its own set of cards with its own set of rules. So there's a section focused all on cards using the bone mechanic, another section using the sacrifice mechanic, another part using magical stones that I haven't really fully explored, because you get cards from that side of the game, but you can still build your deck with all the cards that you gained previously. So I don't really fully know how that mechanic works, but it's a mage thing, and you have to use like spheres and diamonds to power up your cards. And finally there's the robot mechanic, and that's the one I use for the RPG. And basically the robot mechanic is that you have a battery, and on the first turn you have 1 energy, so you can only play creatures that use 1 energy, and the second turn you have 2 energy, and then 3, and so on and so forth. And you have to play around that limited resource and use some creatures to boost your battery thing. And there's also a mechanic where you can link up 2 creatures to create like an electrical circuit, and that will boost the different creatures that are on the circuit. So it's a lot of information in a short amount of time. That RPG section is maybe 4 or 5 hours long, but after playing so much of the roguelike card game and then going to that RPG section, I felt a bit overwhelmed and I was a bit confused because the game goes from super creepy with that ARG stuff and the live action videos to a 2D RPG. There was like a disconnect for me. I kind of wish that the second section was more about the creepy stuff because I had just spent like 6 hours playing the card game and now I have to start from scratch doing more card game. So that was at the end of the RPG section, I was getting a bit done with the card game. I was getting like, it was fine, but that RPG section was the section that was the less interesting for me. And at the end of the RPG section, then you get more videos and it gets more creepy and the company where the developer died starts harassing the guy playing the Inscryption video game. And then you get a third and final section where you go back in the 3D realm. But now instead of playing in the cabin and with the sacrifice mechanic, now it's a roguelike motif. It's now another kind of RPG exploration game where you're in a 2D grid, if you want, and you go from room to room, and you have to start back from scratch now with the robot mechanic again. So that was a bit I see it's on me because I've chosen to play the robot mechanic in the second act, and now I was forced to play the robot mechanic again for the third act, but I didn't know that going in. So at that point, I was a bit fed up with the game. I was like, it's starting to get a bit long. I'm doing the same card game and restarting my deck over and over. But at some point in the middle of the final act, I got a better deck and I could focus more on exploring the mystery and getting through the game and not really caring about the card game anymore because I was winning everything with just a little bit of strategy. So for the last 2-3 hours, I was having some fun back again because I was still exploring like the robot section in 3D and fighting all those mysteries. So that was fun. And there are very cool mechanics. Like you're fighting a boss at some point that will pull up all your files on your hard drive, and you have to sacrifice some of your files on your hard drive to create cards or use them as points for the game. It will ask like, oh, please take a really, really old file. It's going to become a card, and you don't really know what's happening. And then based on how old you got, then you get a card that will be better or worse. And there's also another boss that will pull out your Steam friends and use them as cards. And you can also create cards at that point in the game. And there's a battle where you send one of your created cards to someone else playing the game at the same time. I'm not sure if it's real, but it felt real. So that was pretty cool. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking while playing that game. That's super fun, and I can see why everyone's playing it will say that it's a spoiler mine. It's super spoiler heavy because those things are super fun to discover when you're actually playing them for the first time. So yeah, when you're done with the robot section of the game, there's a final epilogue of like 15 minutes where the Inscryption game deletes itself from existence. There's even a Yu-Gi-Oh reference where you fight with a dual disc for a little section, and all the monsters appear in 3D, and it's super super cool. And then yeah, Inscryption deletes itself. The guy that you were playing gets killed, and it ends like that. It's like a really heavy ending, if you want. Like at some point, you're just having fun playing a card game, and then boom, everything goes to shit. And overall, yeah, before I go on in my final thoughts, once you've beaten the game, you get access to more modes. So you can replay all the sections of the game if you want. And there's also a separate roguelike mode where I haven't delved deep into it, but you play the base section with the sacrifice mechanic, but it's more like Slay the Spire, where you're just going infinitely on the map, I believe, and you build a deck and survive as long as you want, and you can unlock new challenge modes where you start with creatures that are better or worse, or you start with one less card or one less thing, and so on and so forth. And yeah, overall, I had a really good time with Inscryption. It's the first section is extremely good. Like that first 5 to 7 hours is excellent. Top to bottom, it's creepy, it's mysterious, and when that first twist appears, when you get out of the 3D realm and you're seeing live action videos, I let out a big what the fuck, what's happening? I wasn't expecting that kind of twist. I was actually expecting a twist more because I knew there were twists. I was expecting like that 2D RPG twist. And when I got the ARG, I was like, oh wow, that's really, really cool. But the thing that I didn't really like is that it didn't go really far in those ideas. It stayed really close to, it's a card game first and the creep is second. And I think for the pacing, I think the game suffers a bit in the pacing because of that, because at some point, playing the same kind of card game and the same time of duels for 15 hours, I think that's just a bit too much, especially when you have to restart a new deck. Well, in the first section on every run, and then after that, for the Act 2 and the Act 3, it's a lot of starting again and learning new mechanics where I think the game would have been better just having a second section that's something different from the card game to come back to the card game in the third section. I think it would have been a better pacing.
Yeah, I've been very hesitant to try that game because I tend to not like the roguelikes that I've played so far. So there's a couple of these really big ones. Inscryption is one. Hades is another one where like it seems like everybody absolutely loves these games regardless of whether they like roguelikes or not. And I'm over here just like, I've never really jived with this genre in general of the constant restarting and all of that. So I'm very hesitant to actually try either one of those games or honestly any of the other like big ones. So
yeah, I think
sounds cool.
It would be fine. Yeah, because the roguelike elements are only in the first section of the game, and that section is like, for me, I think it took maybe 6 or 7 hours. So it's not short, but it's relatively short because on every subsequent playthrough of the roguelike, you will get new mechanics added by the guy who's called Leshy, but by Leshy who's making the game, you will get more aids. So the next time it's going to be easier. And at the same time, you're figuring out some puzzles in the cabin. So it's not a straight up rogue-like experience as much as you're building a deck, trying some strategies and learning about the world and the mechanic at the same time. So I think in a sense, it's more light in terms of the roguelike section, especially being a card game. Like, I think if you've ever played cards with people, having that deck building experience is also the fun part. Figuring out the rules and making a good deck, I think that works well with the roguelike mechanic because on the second attempt and the third attempt, you understand the cards better. And it's not like maybe playing a roguelike that's a puzzle game, not a puzzle game, but an action platformer where you have to do the executions. Now it's all strategy. So I think it's a bit easier to digest. And then after that, it's not a roguelike anymore. It's purely a story focused and deck building, but you don't have to restart after that first section.
Putting it that way, I might actually like that one a little bit more because I did play Magic the Gathering for, probably 10 to 12 years. And so the consistent build a deck and rebuild a deck and rebuild a deck. Like, I always enjoyed that process of that with playing Magic. And, like, I did play Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit, so, like, I understand how that game plays, but I'd never got into playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitively. I did play Magic competitively before I started playing Warhammer competitively.
Nice. Cool. So, yeah, to round up the tier list, I'm going to once again put it in the great games tier. To me, it could have been an absolute banger, but that middle portion of more card game was a bit too much to me. So it's a great game. I really highly recommend it. The ambience is so cool, but at some point it's a lot of card games. So maybe don't play it. It's one straight sitting. Pace it out over a couple of weeks, and I think it's going to be better.
Excellent. The elusive S tier evades us this entire podcast. So.
Oh no! I put the Sawblades game in the.
Oh, you sure did. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. I have the tier list in front of me, so it's a bit easier to remember.
All right. Well, let's move on to some hobby time then.
So I have more hobby too, but I just talk a lot. So do you want to go with yours first?
Sure, I'll go ahead and go. So after our last podcast, I had just built the robot from Castle in the Sky, and that was kind of a Gundam style build, and I didn't really want to work on much of anything else. I was kind of still in the mood for just that model building zone frame of mind, so I had some Gundams sitting on the shelf, so I decided to pull out an actual Gundam to build, which was the Zaku 2 Master Grade, which I'm gonna send you a couple of pictures real quick here on our Discord.
Yep. So
when it comes to Gundams, there's 5 primary grades of Gundams. They range from SD, which is super deformed, which are super easy Gundams to build, RG, real grade, which are like the entry level, not child Gundams to build, but still very easy. High grade are that perfect middle ground of like, this is a semi-complex model that has a lot of articulation, but it's not the most detailed or the largest that they can make them. And then MG, Master Grade, which is most of what most people are going to find. Like, most people are going to be building Gundams in the HG or MG range, in my opinion. And this was actually only my second MG or Master Grade Gundam that I had built. And it was a fantastic build. It was extraordinarily complex. Like, the directions to build it are very clear, despite the fact that they're all in Japanese, because these Gundams are produced by Bandai for the Japanese market, and then they get imported over here, so the instructions are entirely in Japanese, but the diagrams are very well laid out and are very clear without having the what's the word I'm looking for, like the vocabulary there. Like, you don't need the language there to be able to understand how to put the model together. So it was a really fun build. This build took me about a week and a half to put together, just because it's a lot of pieces. Like, this is, I'd say probably close to 500 pieces for this model. Like, it's a lot, and every one of those pieces has to look good, for me personally, has to be meticulously cut out of the frame and then filed and sanded to look the same color. Because if you cut the piece directly out of the frame where it's been injection molded, you'll get a lot of discoloration in the plastic, and that looks kind of ugly. So you want to cut away from where like the actual injection molding piece attaches to the actual piece of the model kit, and then slowly file and sand away that little bit of extra plastic, so that you're not getting that plastic discoloration that comes with stretching the plastic.
And once you've done all that, do you have to screw them on, glue them on, or they just click together?
Nope, this is a no glue model. This is 100% just click together.
Okay.
So not a single piece of glue was used on this entire model. There's a couple pieces that I am considering using glue on. So if you look on his legs around the knees, there's like these two bands of like piping. And their attachment points are kind of fiddly and don't like to stay in place very well, so I might end up like super gluing those in place just to make sure that they don't pop out at a later point in time. But this model is completely articulate. The hands articulate, the hands, the wrists, the elbows, the upper shoulder articulates both in like a turning direction and in like an up and down ball joint direction. Same with like the head, the torso, the legs, the knees, the ankles. Like these are extremely intricate, extremely articulate models. And then I put all of the stickers on it, all of the panel lining is what it's called, all the black lining that kind of separates the different panels. Yeah. I did all that by hand, and that took quite a bit of time. Also, it's really fun building one of these models, but it is very time consuming. So
yeah, they looked really, really good. You did a great job.
Thank you. I'm not nearly as good as some other people that do this kind of model work, but I enjoy building these models from time to time. So
yeah, for sure. And how much do they cost?
That one, all right. So that one at MSRP is about $60 to $70. I got it on discount for I think like $35 or $40.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So I mean that's not bad for what I would consider like 15 to maybe 20 hours of time put into it, of building and doing all of the panel lining and decals and everything. Like that's a reasonable amount of time. I mean, you can buy a video game brand new these days for $70 and play it for 8 hours, and
yeah,
that's considered a fairly normal thing unless it's an Ubisoft game.
Yeah, well, I think you did great, and it looks really, really, really good.
Thank you.
Your other figures.
Yeah, it fits nicely on the shelf.
Do you have your eyes set on the next one, or not yet?
I have another one on the shelf that I'm probably going to build. It's called Shenlong, an XXG01S. It's from Gundam Endless Waltz, which is one of the anime series. I've never watched really any of the Gundam series. I started building the Gundam models because it gave me an excuse to go through the process of building a model without having to go through the process of also like painting a model, because all of the pieces are already, pre-cast in their colors. And sometimes I just want to go through the process of the build rather than all of the painting also that goes into model making.
Yeah, I understand that. So, for my hobby time, I've done something a bit weird. I was watching a video about a guy who was making some software for his old Apple II. So he was like trying to play some YouTube videos on his Apple II and stuff like that. And then he was talking about a website called websim.ai where you can type any kind of URL. Like you could tap thetrashstation.com, and then there's an AI behind that will try to generate a website that could have existed for that URL. So with that website, you can generate basic web pages like fake forums, fake blogs and stuff, but you can also generate video games. So I decided to try that out because I like making games and I like trying stuff out. So I was like, hey, it's free. I'm going to try this out. So I tried generating a little platformer where you're a bowling ball rolling around in a level and you have to hit 10 bowling pins that's scattered in the level. And at first I was like, build me a platformer, you're a bowling ball, you can run around, there's 10 pins in the levels. And in like 2 or 3 prompts, I had a functioning platformer with a ground, pins, and a bowling ball. And I was like, wow, I just spent like 10 minutes on this and I already have something that's working. And while I was working at work on the side, I would pop this up every like 5 minutes or so and just generate the next. So basically you have your page and then you can ask to change anything in the page. So I would say, hey, I would like to have a double jump. And then I would go back to work. And when I came back 5 minutes later, it would have been generated and I would have a double jump in the page. And if there was a JavaScript error in the code, you can just click on the error and then the AI will fix the error by itself. So the process was super easy. The visuals are all like vector based, so it's just like ellipses, squares, rectangles, one on top of the other. But after like 30, 40, 50 generations, I had a game that was kind of fun. I had a bowling ball. I had a double jump. I actually made the bowling ball look like a bowling ball. I said, hey, I want the bowling ball to be black and have 3 white dots on it, and I want it to rotate when I move, and it did all that using AI. I also have a boost button, so if you keep your Z down, then your bowling ball would go faster. And I added platforms in the level. I asked for the platforms to be randomized, but be arranged in a way that they're spaced evenly in the level. I added some holes that you can fall in. And I also made the game go from easy to being much harder on every win. So on the first level, there's only 2 holes in the level, and then you only have to kick 10 pins out of the level to win that level. But then on the next level, there would be 1 more hole and 1 more pin. And every level, you have more pins and you have more holes up until 5 holes. And I also added a win state. So if you've beaten 10 levels, so 10, how do you say that in bowling? But 10 different, I don't remember.
Frames? I think they're called frames.
Yeah, exactly. So if you beat 10 frames, then you have a pop-up message saying, hey, congratulations, you won the game. And what's really cool about this website is that you can download the HTML that's being generated, the JavaScript, and it's all readable code. So you can effectively use this website to generate the boring part of starting a project, of having your canvas, having your gravity, having your platforming logic, get that down and then do whatever you want with it. So I could take that and then change a couple of things. Like right now, a lot of levels are kind of impossible to beat because pins will appear right above holes and you don't have any coyote time when you fall off a hole. So right now, you have to like kill yourself a bunch of time until you have a level that's actually beatable. But I could just download the code and fix that myself because I know how to code. So I know that AI is like a touch subject, but I think this can enable people to actually start making stuff by just having the creativity of thinking of concepts, trying it out in a couple generations, and then using that as a base to make their own game. So to me, it was a really, really fun experience. And I think it's a fun tool to try some stuff out.
Yeah, I think AI can be an interesting tool to use in like a situation like this where like it's just producing code that's probably been produced in some way, shape, or form before. I tend to have a harder time accepting AI art simply because of the way that a lot of that artwork is scraped off other people's work that's already been done. I don't think we need to get into that topic now, but
I agree. There's a difference between creativity and logic. Like
Yeah.
The fact that it's generating logic more than anything else.
Exactly.
I think it makes it a bit more fair to use, because implementing a gravity function, making the ball fall when there's gravity, that's something that like millions of developers have already done in a million different games, and it's always
right. And it's being done in JavaScript, which, I mean, I was playing games in JavaScript in like 1998. So
yeah, I can go in any website that has any JavaScript game and check that code from there and download their stuff and edit. So yeah. Anyway, all AI talk aside, I think that's a super cool website. It's called websim.ai. And another thing that's super cool is that I will link my bowling platformer game in the show notes, but you can use that link and then you can also remix it yourself. You can take that as a base and ask the AI to change some stuff. Our friend Top Spot 123 played my game and actually beat in it, but I made a really short timer in the game, and he asked the AI to give him more time, and he had his own version with a bit more time, but the same game. And I've seen other people changing the bowling pins to snowmans and adding spikes. Like, what the fuck? The game is already so hard. What do you want spikes in the game? But yeah, I think it's fun that you can see all the creations from other people and then remix them in your own way. And yeah, I think I'm gonna toy with this more. And I had a good time making a little bowling platformer.
Yeah, that's very cool. You said that it was like inspired by like an Apple II initially, like this whole at the start of this conversation. Do you have any experience with old computers like that, whether it's the Apple II or one of the Commodores or the Amiga or whatever?
Yeah, not really. I had, when I was younger, I told that in the first episode, we had Macs. We had like the iMac G3, like with the transparent blue stuff. So I didn't really have to code my own games. I already started with modern softwares and OSs.
I figured I wanted to ask because I've been looking into the Commodore VIC-20 quite a bit recently, and that's probably going to be a purchase in the near future for me is picking up a VIC-20. So
that sounds super fun.
We'll see if my we'll say hyperfixation at this point in time proceeds into an actual purchase and then purchase of some game cartridges that I can actually play on the VIC-20. But it's not a super expensive computer, and a lot of the games aren't very expensive either. So it's a very strong possibility that I'll have a VIC-20 and be playing that on my stream at some point in time. That's getting completely off topic. You had another hobby thing that you wanted to talk about as well.
Yeah, I'm making some hot seat cards, so I'm still on my quest to make good cards for my future possible card game. And I've been making more hot seat cards, which are basically just cards with weird questions on them for the Polykill podcast. And I've been using a website called Dextrous, which is a website focused on card making. And the website is so well done. Basically, you create the template for your card, and then you just have like an Excel sheet, and you can just type whatever you want in each field, and all your cards will automatically generate at the top, and you can export everything in an easy printable way, just like that, just by hitting a button and hitting export. Our friend Caleb J. Ross is also using that website to make his rock building card game, like a challenge game. And yeah, I had made some cards for the Polykill podcast, and I've been making more cards for them. And I just wanted to shout out that website. If you're interested in making some board games and making some assets and cards and stuff, Dextrous, it has a weird extension. It's like an Australian website, I believe. Dextrous.com.au, so it's an Australian website.
Okay.
It's still in alpha, and there's a paid plan to have like unlimited cards, templates, and stuff. But with the free template, you can test the software, and it's so good. Like before that website, you would have to like make a Photoshop template, and every time you want to move something, you would have to move every card that you had made with that template or something like that. But with that, you can just adjust your template once, and then all your cards would update in real time. So it's a really fantastic website, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you want to make any kind of card games, it's fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds like actually fantastic software if you're looking for that very specific niche. Like, being able to have access to something that's just like instantly will update everything within that entire catalog of cards that you're trying to make, like that, I can see that being huge. I've played plenty of board games that have a lot of cards, and I can see that being important. So
exactly. And playing Inscryption in the past few weeks, I'm really tempted to try to imagine like a deck building one-on-one game, Inscryption inspired game. I think there would be surely someone has already made something like that, but I can really envision like a Yu-Gi-Oh type of game, but instead of just dueling, you have to actually build your deck and move on the board, and then fight against your opponent, and maybe have a 4 out of 7 kind of challenge throughout the game, where you move on the board, build your deck, and fight every once in a while. I think there's something really fun to do with that formula.
Well, there's a whole host of deck building games that have been made with physical cards that you can buy from board game shops. I have a few myself. We could talk to our friend Kevin, who's really, really into board games and has a whole podcast around board games. Yeah, I'm sure he could point you to a few others that, actually probably many more than I could, that have interesting mechanics. So
that's my hobby time for this week, and I'm still on a quest to find my perfect paper for my cards. Like for the Polykill Hudson cards, I'm just using photo paper because it's not a card game. So even if they're sticky, I don't really care. They're looking good, but I've ordered more paper because I have some stuff right now that can work, but I've actually used your advice and went back in the card print-to-play Discord that I was following a few years ago, and I've seen someone recommend linen paper, and I found some relatively cheap linen paper that's pretty thin that I could double back to make my cards in 2 sheets. So I'm waiting for that. It has a pretty strong texture, so I think it's going to make some actually high-quality looking cards with having all that texture printed on. So next episode, I should have more news about that paper. I'm still waiting for it, but I'm still hopeful to find the good paper. If that doesn't work, I have something else that can work right now, and I will just commit to that for the foreseeable future.
All right. Excellent. Let's go to Loot Box.
Yeah.
So I only have one Loot Box today. I have a YouTube channel called Cracking the Cryptic. I found this YouTube channel very recently, and they popped up on my recommended feed for whatever reason. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. And I clicked on it because it looked interesting. And essentially what this guy does is he solves very challenging Sudoku puzzles. And also their channel has a whole website where they create Sudoku puzzles for their community that is very interesting in Sudoku. I'm not super huge into Sudoku, but what I found interesting about this video, the video specifically was called Is This Sudoku Impossible? And it was a Sudoku puzzle that only has a single number on the initial board. So it started with just a 2 on the board, and not only did they have to follow the normal Sudoku rules, they had to follow additional rules where there were cages within that stretched across the normal boxes within Sudoku that all had to add up to certain numbers and all had to contain certain numbers. And it became a very challenging puzzle. And what I found interesting about this video is the gentleman's enthusiasm that he has for when he starts to try and solve the puzzle, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know how to solve this. I'm really confused." And then he starts to find bits and pieces over. This is an hour-long video, and I watched all of it. I watched all of it, entertained the entire time, because he's finding these bits and pieces, and he's like, "Oh, well, this allows me to solve these numbers and get those into place, and then by solving those, that allows me to find these other numbers and get those into place." And he's working through his logic of finding the answer to the puzzle out loud, which I found really entertaining and really interesting. So I've watched a few more of his videos. I've had a lot of fun watching this channel so far. He has like an insane number of subscribers, like 650,000 subscribers, and I had never heard of this channel before. But I mean, like, YouTube's a massive place, so
yeah, I'm always impressed how many like million subscriber YouTubers exist that I've never heard of. It's so incredible. There's
I know
a lot of people with a lot of audience that most people don't even know exists. So that's incredible.
Right. And Sudoku. Who would have ever thought that Sudoku YouTube videos are going to be getting millions of views per video? Like, that's insane. But interesting content. It's not video game related, but I watch a lot of stuff that's not video game related also. So I figured I would shout something out there.
So cool. For my loot box, I have 2 channels that I want to shout out, 2 videos exactly. And the first one is Animeajay. And the video I want to shout out is Dragonball Daima Animation Breakdown. So I don't know if you know, but there's a new Dragon Ball show that's coming out right now. The first episode just released on Netflix today, actually. Not the day that you're listening to, but the day we're recording. And it's like the last series from Toriyama, the guy who created Dragon Ball, because he died this year. And he was super involved in making this series. They were making the series for like the past 2 or 3 years. So it's very high quality, and I'm very excited. I love Dragon Ball. I've watched all of it. I've watched all of Dragon Ball Super and everything. So I'm super excited for the new series. And this guy, Animeajay, is animation nerd. Back when Dragon Ball Super was airing like 7 years ago, he was on every episode breaking down the animation, trying to guess which animator animated which scene and what kind of good animation looked like, what kind of bad animation looked like, and trying to pinpoint all the different styles of every animators from the Dragon Ball series. Like, oh, this guy draws his ears like that, and this guy worked on that other series, and he's famous for this kind of action scene. And the guy is super knowledgeable. He loves animation. He loves Dragon Ball, and it's the first video we put out in like 7 years, because there hasn't been really new Dragon Ball content in the last few years, except for a movie or 2. So I'm super happy to see Animeajay come back. And if you like Dragon Ball, I cannot recommend Animeajay enough. He's a super chill dude, and I learned a lot of stuff about Japanese animation just by watching his stuff.
I'm definitely gonna check that out. It was not him, and I was just looking really quickly to see if I could find it, but there was like a 45 to 50 minute video that I had seen on YouTube years ago at this point, like maybe 2018, 2019, that broke down like the introduction, like 3 minutes of the movie Akira, and how insane the animation is in that movie. And I love deep dives into like the intricacies of what people are doing with animation, because it's such a fabulous art style.
Yeah.
So I love people that really break it down and are able to articulate breaking it down. I was not able to find that video. If I find it, I will. I'll shout it out next time for sure.
Cool. But yeah, Animeajay is great.
Yeah, sounds great. And I love Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is fantastic.
I watched the first episode of Dragon Ball Daima today, and I can recommend it. For now, it's fun, it's exciting, and it looks super good. So I'm pretty excited to see where it goes.
I bet.
And my second loot box shout out is a channel called, the guy is called Mallerd. And the video I watch is what was the definitive version of MS Paint. So the guy just installed every version of MS Paint going back from Windows 1.0 to Windows 11. And the guy is an animator, is an artist, I'm not sure. But he basically tried to embrace every version of Paint, give a bit of an history of each version, where it was coming from, what was the new innovations in that version, and drew some artwork in every version of them and told what he liked about that version and what he didn't like about that version. And the guy is super talented. He made really great drawings in every version, and it was pretty interesting seeing Paint evolve over the years. And like, I'm super familiar with the Windows XP version, but before that I didn't really consider the other version which was like landscape, and it didn't really have colors. It was just like gradients and patterns. And yeah, if you want a bit of history, great artwork, that video is super fun. I had a great time. I never heard of that guy. I think he doesn't have a lot of subscribers, but that video popped off and it's totally worth it. It's totally deserved. It's a great video, great artist, and I'm interested to see where he goes from there.
All right, so let's go to emails. Max, do you want to read Rob's email, or would you like me to?
Yeah, do you want to read it? I posted it in the Discord.
So Robert Ring from the Classic Gaming Podcast. He sent us an email that we were not able to get to on our last episode. It said first email, ? in the title box. And Rob, unfortunately, you were not the first emailer. Josh Leslie was the first emailer, but we were getting to your first email today.
Yeah.
He says, hey guys, loving the podcast. Great first episode too. There's often slightly stiff sounding as the hosts are still getting comfortable with the flow of the show, but you guys sounded relaxed and comfortable right off the bat, which I agree with. I think we sounded comfortable off the bat, but it was not our first time recording together, so that might be part of it.
And thanks, Robert. It's really great.
Yes. Random question for you. What's the hardest you have laughed while playing a video game? Let's go ahead and stop there and answer Robert's question real quick. Max, what's the hardest you have ever laughed while playing a video game?
Actually, if this email was sent like last year, it would have been weird because we didn't have a podcast back then. But if I was answering that question last year, I don't think I would have really had an answer. It would have been something random, like playing Arkanoid with my brother, and the game is like silent, but then there's just beeps and boops, and I don't know, something about having a few beers in and playing that silent game. Me and my brother would just start imitating those sounds and sound super stupid. But that's not really like because of the game. It's just having fun with my brother. But this year, I played a game. I trying to find the exact. Yeah, it's Alfonso's Bowling Challenge by Kitten M. Stir on itch.io. It's a Pico 8 game, and that game is fucking wild. I never laughed that hard playing a game. It's so random. It starts like a normal bowling game, but it's a bit like a platformer. So the pins are at the top. It's a Pico 8 game. You have your bowling ball, and then you take like an elevator and you jump into the pins. And then every time you hit the pins, it just shifts to like another mechanic. And then it's something super stupid like Alfonso's barber challenge, and now you're using your bowling ball to cut the hair of a guy, and it's super wild. It's super random. It's like 10 minutes, and it's the funniest 10 minutes I've ever played in any game. I highly recommend that you just take that 15 minutes to play through that. It's a bunch of random situations with a bowling ball. It's awesome.
Excellent. For me, I had a game that actually made me laugh out loud this year, and that was South Park: The Stick of Truth for PS3. Yeah, if you're a fan of South Park, you owe it to yourself to play South Park: Stick of Truth. Like it's those guys doing what they do best and just making fucking South Park jokes and being funny. And it's all voice acted by all the original characters and everything, and it's so good. There's so many references in that game to like classic episodes of South Park. Like the first 9 seasons of South Park are so fucking good and so goddamn funny. And like it's not just referencing those that makes it funny. It's like putting those characters and some of those situations into new situations and interacting in different ways. Man, the game's fucking great. And South Park, I mean, South Park never fails to get a laugh from me. Like even with how old it is at this point. Like I watched the first couple of seasons not that long ago, and it's still funny. You'll still get a chuckle out of it every now and then. But other than that, Road Rash 64 is insane. You'll just be driving a bike and suddenly get hit by somebody with a baseball bat and go flying off your bike, and it's crazy. You do the same thing to other people too, and it's genuinely one of the best Nintendo 64 games I've ever played. It's so fun. It's so funny. The rubber banding is perfect. It always feels like a photo finish. I cannot recommend Road Rash 64 enough. It's hilarious, and it's a great racing game.
You just made me remember playing FIFA 2002 on the GameCube with my best friend Michael, and I remember genuinely laughing so much because in that soccer game, the characters just foul and jump out of their way all the time. You do like a tackle on the ball, and all the characters would jump up, and then you get like a slow motion after that of the penalty, and it's crazy. Those characters don't touch each other, but they still jump in the air. And when I was young, that was like hilarious to me. It's so random, so bad, so like bad collisions and bad angles. I remember laughing a lot playing that soccer game.
Oh, that's great. So Rob continues, it's rare for me to actually laugh out loud while playing a game. In my adult years, it's probably been 5 games or less, but the hardest I've ever laughed while playing a game was when I was 11 or 12 at a friend's house, and we rented some Olympics game for the PS1 back in the 90s. It was one of those Olympics games where for any given event, you have to do some random input on the controller that makes sense only to the developers and no one else. We didn't have a manual, so of course, we had to figure out the controls on our own. This led to hilarious incidents where our character would end up doing something absurd. The only event I remember specifically was the long jump. We were just mashing buttons and hoping for the best. I remember the character in an all-out sprint up to the jumping line, and then getting there, jumping straight up in the air as high as he could, and only moving forward like 1 inch. We were, without exaggeration, rolling on the ground laughing at how fucking stupid it looked. And
that sounds like my soccer anecdote. It's just those sports games back then, there were good ones and there were fucking stupid ones.
Oh, for sure. I can't say that I have any specific sports anecdotes from games from that period of time because I wasn't really playing them. Like I played a lot of like NHL 96 on the Sega Genesis. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think like FIFA 07 on Nintendo 64, and then kind of got out of sports games for a really long time and only kind of came back to them a little bit recently with like not modern at all sports games. But Rob continues. He says he looks forward to listening to more. Keep up the good work, Rob. Robert, thank you so much for the email. We appreciate the hell out of it. And Rob is from the Classic Gaming Podcast. Great podcast if you have a chance to listen to a couple of guys dick off about classic games for 3.5 hours at a time. Yeah, it's good time.
If you're tired of hearing us talking about trash games, they talk about classic games over there.
Yeah, they talk about games that you might have heard of.
You had a great showing this week with Resident Evil on Wii is not the most known. Well, yeah.
Dead Space 2 is my most known game this week, without a doubt. Sure. Like that is AAA Visceral Game Studio, EA published. Like that's a AAA game. Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles is this little game that was made by like I don't even know what the name of the studio was, but it's like kind of shamishly published by Capcom to no fanfare at all.
I got baited by a license. Yeah, thanks, Robin. We're gonna read your second email next week. Don't fret, it's coming.
Yes.
And keep them coming.
For sure. I think that brings us to the end of our show. If you'd like to reach out with us, reach out with us. If you'd like to reach out with us with any comments, or topics of discussion, please email us at thetrashstation@gmail.com.
So we would like to thank Heath. How did you say your first name? Heath Aldridge for our intro and outro music. You can find the link to all his music on his Bandcamp page at heathaldridge.bandcamp.com. And we would like also to thank RainbowSavvyDesigns for our logo. Links to both of their works will be available in the show notes.
And you can find me on twitch.tv/scotchandhobbies. I usually stream every Monday and Wednesday around 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can also find me on social media at Scotch and Hobbies. Streaming. What do I have coming up streaming? I have no idea. Maybe Parasite Eve. I think that's what I'm streaming next.
Cool. And if you want to play some of my games, you can check out my itch.io page at itch.io/Podomax, or I will have a link to my bowling platformer somewhere in the show notes. Otherwise, you can see what I'm playing on Twitter at PodomaxDev. And if you speak French, I have a ton of videos on the good old YouTube at youtube.com/Chevier.
Excellent. Dude, have a good night. It was great recording with you.
Yeah, for sure. Same. Have a good one.